Florida's invasive invasion is a perfect example of the second leading cause of what scientists describe as a sixth mass extinction. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, the current rate of extinction is 1,000 times greater than the long-term historical pace. Additionally, that same organization suggests that we could lose 30 to 50% of the Earth's current species by the mid-21st century. There is little doubt that the direct impact of man is the leading cause of that massive extinction rate. Deforestation is the most frequently referenced example. Likewise, the enormous growth of the world's population and the demand for converting forest into farmland is understandable. Perhaps less understandable, however, is the unquenchable desire to exploit and profit from the reckless use of the world's natural resources. Another cause for the current mass extinction, according to most scientists, is the displacement of invasive species. Over the Earth's history, isolated ecosystems have developed a natural and cooperative balance. Even though aggressive species continuously prey upon others, a natural balance seems to eventually develop. However, when one species is taken from one environment and recklessly placed into another, the established balance is disrupted. Tropical South America and Latin America provide the United States with many agriculture imports. A large number of those imports are initially transported and unloaded in South Florida, along with the invasive species that hitch rides. Additionally, many tropical pets escape or might be released by pet owners. These animals find South Florida climate compatible and quickly raise established population. This scenario has become a recurring story which merits the title of this video and post. On this video and in the complimentary blog post at mkapub.com, we're going to review a few of these invasive species and look at some of the themes that can be acknowledged around Florida's invasive invasion. Unfortunately, a globalized economy has facilitated the transportation of some exotic species into new ecosystems where they have proved disruptive and destructive. The brown tree snake is a perfect example. During the final years of World War II, the increased military action in the Pacific accidentally transported the snake from the Australia-Indonesia area to Guam. Unrestricted by natural predators and restraints, the tree snake sowed havoc on the native bird and lizard population to the point that today they're both practically non-existent. Secondly, Spanish explorers introduced domestic hogs into America around the 1500s as a source of food. Unfortunately, many of them eventually escaped and proved comfortable living in the wild. During the 1900s, some well-intended sportsmen introduced the Eurasian wild boar into the same regions of the United States for hunting purposes. Sadly, the boars proved to be somewhat proficient escape artists, and they quickly added their genetic composition to the feral population that had been there since the 1500s. The hybrid strain of domestic feral and wild boars has proven to be very resilient and destructive to the native wildlife of America. Do note now that the feral hog population range was described as American and not just that of the United States. The reason is that the population quickly stretched from the southern United States northward all the way to Canada. Along the way, the hog population laid waste to numerous farm crops. Along with the farm crops, they also destroyed large populations of snakes, lizards, salamanders, and turtles. Today, the damage and the cost control at the tusk of the hybrid swine is estimated to be around $1.5 billion annually. There is no better geographical example of an invasive invasion than the state of Florida. The Florida Peninsula extends southward between the waters of the western Atlantic and the eastern Gulf of Mexico, near the tropical waters of the Caribbean Sea. Many exotic species find their way to South Florida by cargo ships, or sometimes as pets that owners have released. Many of the alien newcomers find themselves restricted to South Florida due to the geographical limits of the tropical climate. However, some find that despite having originated in a tropical environment that they can easily adjust to the temperate environment north of their initial location. The impact of these invasive representatives differs significantly. Some seem to fit into the new environment with minimal disruptions. Others disrupt the natural balance that had found equilibrium over the previous centuries and millenniums. And unfortunately, there are a few that present a direct danger to the human race. The Mediterranean house gecko first appeared in Key West early in the 20th century, perhaps aboard cargo ships or via the pet trade. Since then, they've slowly marched northward and across the southern United States. They appear to be a benign newcomer, but as they migrate northward with the warming climate, the rest of that story remains unwritten. As per the attached photograph, the lizards are primarily nocturnal. They feed on insects near night lights, and they're highly resistant toward insecticides. Assisting their migration trends, they're quite fertile and fast breeders. If they do bite, it is ineffective and they are not venomous. The Cuban tree frog probably arrived in South Florida early in the 20th century via cargo ships from Cuba or other Caribbean islands. Since their initial appearance, they have migrated to the northern parts of the state. They do feed on insects, but they are considered cannibalistic and have been known to prey on several smaller native tree frogs. They can be gray, green, or brown and do have the ability to change colors. They have sticky toe pads that accommodate their climbing needs, and they frequently appear around nightlights. Their skin presents a slimy texture upon touch, which also causes eye and nasal irritation upon contact. The population of the native tree frogs has been reported to decline significantly in their presence, and they are known to enter homes frequently. The green iguana, like many Florida invasives, migrated to Florida via the pet trade and cargo ships. They are large, up to 5.5 feet in length, and light green in color. They're also vegetarian, which makes them a non-existent threat to Florida wildlife. Not surprisingly, though, their largely vegetarian diet also includes several scarce plants in the South Florida area. Consequently, invasive species continue to demonstrate that they can be a threat to native wildlife and plants. Fortunately, they are not cold tolerant, and their northward migration, even considering global warming, should be limited. The cane toad was indigenous to northern South America and Latin America. However, because of a voracious appetite and a penchant for eating cane beetles that inhabit sugarcane fields, they have been intentionally relocated to areas that farm sugarcane. The cane toad wears the crown of being the largest member of the toad family, with the larger females reaching lengths of better than 5 inches from snout to tail. The biggest problems that they present is the fact that they possess a significant toxin in the skin glands located immediately behind the eyes. The poison will readily kill small mammals that make oral contact, and fortunately, the cane toad has maintained its location in South Florida without too much northerly migration. The Burmese python, imported into the United States via the pet trade, was first sighted in the Everglades area during 1980. After the turn of the 20th century, reproducing populations were reported in the same area. Due to their large size, which is about 20 plus feet in length, and their stealth hiding habits, they are apex predators. Sadly, the small mammalian population in areas where they have established populations have been reduced from 80 to 100%. Their potential for migration is somewhat of a controversy. They do not tolerate cold weather very well, but some scientists suggest that they have the potential to extend well beyond their current range. Additionally, global warming could extend that potential range. Perhaps there is no better example of the potentially intrusive and destructive nature of invasive species than the beautiful but caustic lionfish. Released into native waters by aquarium owners, tired of the responsibility The lionfish proved to be a severe threat to the tropical environment of southeastern United States. While most of the smaller coral fish species are vegetarian, the lionfish is carnivorous. This characteristic has joined hands with the devastating trend of ocean acidification to create havoc on the reef systems of the Caribbean and surrounding waters. The snapper and grouper population, already under attack from overfishing, found their fingerling population devastated by the voracious lionfish appetite. Likewise, the same fate fell on other reef-friendly fish populations. Further complicating the lionfish dilemma is the fact that they are armed with venomous spines that impede many harvesting efforts. On a positive note, the fish, though small, does possess a delicate and pleasant source of seafood. There is little doubt that the most dangerous animal in the world is the mosquito. Of course, the mosquito threat is due to the deadly mosquito-borne diseases that they transmit. The repercussions of these diseases account for millions of worldwide deaths annually. In 2015, malaria alone accounted for nearly 500,000 deaths. The detail that makes these statistics relevant is the fact that the more recent invasive species to find a home in the United States are mosquitoes. More specifically, they are the Asian tiger mosquito and the yellow fever mosquito. Fortunately, these well-established mosquito populations do not pose an epidemic threat at the time of this publication. The diseases associated with these invasive mosquitoes include chikungunya, Zika virus, dengue, West Nile virus, malaria, and yellow fever. Again, global trade probably accounts for these invasive mosquitoes. More specifically, most people point to the importation of tires from China and Asia. Used tires often retain an amount of water, and the water is often infected with mosquito larvae. For a while, the more temperate climate of North Florida isolated it from South Florida's invasive invasion. Time always moves forward, though, and recently the house gecko and the Cuban tree frog ventured into the more temperate northern regions of the state. Not many people care about the house gecko or the Cuban tree frog, but they represent a trend that warrants attention. If the gecko and the tree frog can venture further northward, the question is, which species will follow them? Will those invasive species threaten the native species? How much further will the invasive mosquitoes venture? One thing should definitely not be forgotten. Invasive species are the second leading cause of the sixth mass extinction, and Florida is highway number 1 on their migration route. Now, if you happen to be interested in this topic of extinction, I'd highly recommend a book titled The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert. It'll carry your understanding of this topic much further, and you can find a link to that book on our website at mkapub.com. So, thank you very much for tuning in, and you have a good one.